Hey there, welcome to Charting Toward Intimacy, where we're expanding the natural family planning conversation. I'm your host, Ellen Holloway. All right, we are here with Holly Baril, which sounds like a Halle Berry, which is kind of funny. Sorry, as I said that out loud, I was like, oh my gosh. We're not here with Halle Berry, we're here with Holly Baril. And Holly's going to be sharing her NFP journey with us. Holly, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me. Yes, so I am a Creighton Model fertility care practitioner, and I have been for 20 years.
Fantastic.
Which is scary. I've also charted my fertility the same amount of time. So I became a Creighton practitioner soon after I discovered NFP. I went to college. I had a health degree and bought into, the Planned Parenthood kind of mindset of, I didn't really know much, but I was just like, sure, that sounds great. Yeah, women empowerment. Yeah, whatever, and kind of didn't really do much thought, just kind of went along. And the interesting thing is I took a class, I was in preventive medicine, and the only class that really talked about like women's health care, this professor, I don't know why I just remember him, is his wife was very pro Planned Parenthood and did a whole thesis, her PhD or whatever it was, on the argument that women who are a certain income status that have babies out of wedlock should be sterilized. And he was,
oh my gosh.
Yeah. I will never forget that. And at the time, I'm in my I'm early 20s. I'm just like, and honestly, I remember thinking that just doesn't sound right. But I'm 20, 21, and college back then, you didn't challenge a professor, but everybody was just like, thought that was the best idea ever. And I just didn't give much thought. And then I ended up going into, now it's horrifying. I mean, I'm like, God, I hope that woman changed her mind. But
yeah, oh my gosh.
She was for it. But then I went into, I was a clinical research coordinator, and I actually was doing, working with patients that were on this trial. It was actually for orthotricycline. That's how old I am. I mean, that was like one of the first birth control pills that came out. Or one of the more modern ones, I would say.
Sure, yeah.
First one, more modern ones. And all I remember that was kind of God kind of first working with me. Was I remember just listening to these women, and I don't think there was a woman, maybe she was on placebo, that didn't have side effects, but these women were talking about their side effects. And at the time, I was pretty secular, and I didn't really, I thought, well, I don't want to take that thing. And then I slowly was coming back into, I left that, I got a job and did diabetes research after that. But I just remember listening to women complain. I never really met a woman, I'm in secular world. I didn't really hang out with people who were religious or went to church or whatever. And I just remember thinking at that time, I don't know, why does everybody complain about this? I thought this was supposed to be so great, this, birth control thing, but not, I never met anyone that was like, oh yeah, I feel wonderful on this. Like, they was always complaining. And so then I slowly came back to my Catholic faith at that time and started kind of understanding more about my faith and how our faith relates to natural family planning and birth control. And but my first pull away from that contraceptive culture was secular, was like, well, I don't want to do that. They're not empowered. They feel like crap all the time. Like, why would I want to do that?
I would like that on a shirt. They don't feel empowered. They feel like crap.
They feel like crap. I don't feel empowered. Yeah, there you go.
Or maybe like a coffee mug. Maybe not a shirt, but a coffee mug.
And so it was funny because, people are, oh, it's because, you came back to your faith. And I'm like, actually, no, I was already on the road when I had no real faith at all. I mean, I just didn't want to go down that road. And then once I finally kind of started understanding more about it, then I was like, oh, well, yeah. And I remember even going to my doctor, because my husband and I got engaged. And I mean, that was 2001, right? No. It's so long ago. Got married.
It was.
we got married in 2002. I started so that summer of 2001 is when we got engaged. But I had gone to my doctor, my OBGYN, even before that, and was like, well, I kind of knew we were on that road, and like, what, asking questions. I was still very new to my faith. And they were like, well, it's only the pill. Like, that's it. Like, there's nothing else that will work for you. And I just was like,
so sad.
That can't be right. Oh, if you want to do that, you're going to get pregnant. And I'm like, that just doesn't sound right. Because what? And I also worked at a crisis pregnancy center volunteering. And most of those women were on some form of birth control that were pregnant coming in, to the crisis pregnancy center. So I was like, what? Huh? So like, I was hold on. Young then. I was young. I was in my mid-20s. So I didn't now. I mean, I approach things a lot differently. I'm in my mid-40s. So I didn't have the confidence to push back on that narrative. And, because, you just sort of like, I don't know. I wasn't very, very well versed yet and on, fertility awareness and things like that. So then I just happened to, I worked for a pro-life organization, and this woman just came in and was like, I think you should do this. You should become a practitioner for a Creighton Model. And I didn't know anything about the Creighton Model. And I was like, well, I've been looking for something, because we're engaged.
Yeah. You're like, this is what I've been looking for.
And the reason why I chose the Creighton Model is because this was before Marquette obviously even came about, but the medical side of it was the NAPRO technology. Because of my degree in health, I wanted a system that took care of these issues, because a lot of women I had met were on the pill for health reasons, or they were told, oh, you have PMS, here's the pill. You have heavy periods, here's, everything is the pill. Oh, you feel sad today, here's the pill, it'll take care of it. The birth control pill will just take care of all of your things. And so I was like, there's got to be a better way. So I did a lot of research on it and was like, wow, I really like this NAPRO technology. Going alongside charting and having doctors that can help women, in a more empowering way. And so when I went to training in October of 2001, there were no practitioners. I think there was one in Fort Worth. I'm in Dallas, so it's like an hour and a half away. And I didn't really know that. I'm so old. I'm dating myself. That was before the big internet and how we are now. Like I got graduated college in 1998. That was when email just started. I mean, that's like what we have now is so, back then there was there was blogs maybe. There was no way to get the message out really other than brochures. I would post brochures and like ads and church bulletins. That's what I love about now is the technology we have to reach people. But so I had no idea there were any teachers. And so I just went to the training, and I learned while I was training to become a practitioner, I learned how to chart at the same time. Now I wasn't married yet, so that helped.
Yeah.
we weren't married till January. So I had some time. But it took about a year. And then, so then I was doing fairly well. We grew. I just, because it took a lot. Social media wasn't really around, for a long time. So it was mostly word of mouth. It was a hard road to get, even in my area, just to get the word out about natural family planning.
I feel like we still find that as instructors.
But
getting that word out. It was
NFP is Catholic. NFP is that's the rhythm method. So it was to me, it just in the last 10 years, seeing the secular movement towards fertility awareness kind of getting away from that has been really neat to see, because it was like, finally, because my husband would be always like, oh, well, go, people that eat organic, don't they like to eat, like, don't they want like nothing in their body, natural and all this stuff. And I tried that. No.
Right. It's just like, people don't want to hear it.
But it's like, to me, I call it the sacred cow. Like no, we're not going to touch that area. Mm-hmm. And I get it, because it's scary. Now when I came into marriage, I was already using NFP. I mean, I can imagine coming, and I've had clients like this where they are trying to avoid, and they have been using a certain, contraceptive half their marriage or part of their marriage. So yeah, that's scary to say, hey, we're going to rely solely on this now.
Yeah.
So I understand that kind of thing, and I try to meet people where they're at. So I told my husband, I said, well, it is, and it is. It's hard to educate people because, again, when we're not taught this kind of information in school as women, other than, well, we have periods, you have periods every month, but we're not really taught anything else. So a lot of this is very foreign. And I know, because I was like, what, why didn't we know about what?
Yeah.
Why didn't I know any of this before? Why
it's so funny.
Tell me about it instead of telling me, here's all the birth controls you can use.
Mm-hmm.
Like, well, but I'm not fertile every month, or every day of the month. And not that I think it's easy to know, like, oh, here's when you're fertile, all the detail, but to know your body and to understand kind of where the mucus goes and why we have cervical mucus and all that kind of stuff. You don't have an infection every month.
Exactly. Oh my gosh. Well, yeah, it's really interesting. I think I find that too, is like when I'm introducing NFP to someone in fertility awareness, it's hard to believe that, like, they find it hard to believe because it's even harder to believe that they haven't been told this before, if it is in fact true. It's like, I don't believe that is true, that we have this like fertility cycle, because if that was true, I would have been told this in junior high in sex ed class. Like,
right.
And so that's what we're
like my fertility was so complicated.
Yeah.
I mean, that, oh, well, you need this. You need this because, it's just too much for you. I mean, there's still that belief, unfortunately, in that, that professor I had with his wife and the sterilization, that kind of, I would say, argue prejudice and discrimination against anyone of a certain economic status. They can't handle this. This is too high. I've seen it even with regards to in NFP circles. Oh, well, it's too complicated. I don't think they would understand how to charge. And so a lot of times I've seen physicians who are even, I would say, supportive of NFP. It's only at a certain economic, well, they're not educated. I'm like, what does that have to do with anything? This is the body. We can teach someone how to do that.
Yeah. We can teach you what your body, and yes, like fertility awareness, like NFP can be kind of complicated in certain instances, but if you take a step back, it's really not that complicated of a process that's going through our bodies on kind of a regular cyclical basis, or you could say a monthly basis. Because, right, we have menstruation, and then we have the build up to ovulation, and then we have ovulation, and then we have the, luteal phase, completely infertile phase, whatever you want to call it. And then it cycles again. It's not that complicated of science. It can be, kind of difficult to, okay, how do I learn how to track these things? How do I, take down the correct notes? How do I get this, into my schedule as a regular thing to do? And those are more like personal work things that you need to do, not necessarily that the science is all that complicated. Right.
And that's what frustrates me, is that it's like the presumption of, well, they're not going to be able to a certain, but somebody's deemed that you can't do. It'd be like anything that's insulting, because it's like, first of all, it's my body, and you don't need a degree to like learn your body. Now, I would argue, yes, like I was talking to a woman last night, and she was like, a little overwhelmed, and I said, trust me, it seems like it's complicated because you're learning new things that you've never known before, and you're like, oh my gosh, what? And so, but when you get into it and you start learning your own fertility signs, it becomes easier. So it's really just learning the system of tracking that's the right. It's like, well, because every system of fertility awareness or NFP is a little bit different. But the good news is that your cycle is most likely going to be fairly consistent month after month. Right. So once you have a couple cycles down, then you're like, oh, okay, yeah. Because then things start, even with my clients who have irregular, hormonal issues, there's still some consistency in the irregularity. Like, oh yeah, this is my other crazy cycle again. So it's not like you have one cycle one way, another cycle the next way. So it's more of just learning, like you were saying, the personal, how to adapt, learn, observing your fertility signs to your lifestyle. But that's with any new health thing, lifestyle change. Exercising. When am I going to exercise? I want to start
putting that into your schedule.
And I want to run a marathon, or I want to start eating this way. Like it's not that in and of itself is super complicated, but it's how am I going to do this in the midst of everything else that I'm doing? And I think once, at least for me, yeah, it was challenging. And I would argue, one of the things with Creighton that's challenging is the checking the before, and every time you go to the bathroom. And I was telling this lady last night, I said, even practitioners, we miss observation. I can only speak for myself. I miss observation.
Let's just put it out there, guys. Your instructor is going to say, look, it's really important not to miss observations, but in their head, they're thinking, I missed an observation today, or I missed an observation yesterday, right? It happens to all of us. You are not like you're not weird for like missing an observation, because we all do it. We all do it.
No, absolutely. And that's where, and just charting for 20 years through having many babies and, postpartum. And then I've had every weird cycle, like mucus wise, where we had to implement yellow stamps with Creighton, I've had. So I'm like, I know. So like one of the benefits of that charting for so long as a practitioner is, and having all those crazy cycles that needed management, is I now know how the frustration, and then I can help my clients go, okay, hey, this is a short-term frustration. Trust me, I've been there. And I can relate a little bit more to where they're at. But my job, I feel like, as I've been doing this longer, I'm one of the very few practitioners that's actually still teaching after 20 years. Because let's face it, as an NFP instructor, you can get burned out really easily.
And let's be honest,
any system.
It's not a way to make money.
No, it's not. It is not a way to make money. And so, I just learned that my job, I feel like as a practitioner, is I teach the system. So I teach the whole system correctly to my clients, but I also try to make it usable, because I feel like my job as a practitioner is not to be the sex police, or, whatever, the police on, yes, I need to guide my clients if they're making, if they are doing charting errors and that. But my main goal is to make it a realistic system. And so without bending any instructions, but just be like, I have to be, especially when you have clients. A lot of my clients are, especially when they're postpartum and, you're tired.
Got everything else going on.
Yes. Or, you're struggling with infertility and you're working with a physician or any sort of fertility health issue, that it's, you didn't do this one minor little charting thing, like how many times you saw that mucus. I'm not there to slap their hand. I'm there to guide them and yes, say, hey, you need to do this, but I need to make it to where they're not going to just give up and be like, forget it, I'm over this. Like, to me, my job is to help them become experts in their fertility to where they don't need me anymore, so that they feel so confident in what they're doing, and so that they feel like, yeah, they can do this long term. Right. Because one of the hardest struggles about using NFP or fertility awareness is long-term use. Because if, for me, and I do tell this a lot to my engaged couples, I'm not a sunshine and rainbows type of NFP instructor. And I've met a lot when I first started learning. I met a lot from other systems, and including Creighton. And it was frustrating because when I started using it, and this was obviously, like I said before, social media, and you can connect with people online, because I didn't know anyone, and when you are doing it and you're in an area where most of your friends or most of your people that you come in contact with are using contraceptives or are sterilized, you feel very much alone, and you feel like, why am I doing this? I'm frustrated. I don't like this, but they told me this was supposed to like make my marriage all great. And it's not. Like, we're fighting over this stupid system.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and this is me. I'm a practitioner. And I'm like, how am I supposed to be selling this to people when I don't even like it? And so I just
all right, there's my shirt.
Because there were many, many times when, my husband and I fought over, because my husband traveled till COVID. He traveled most of our marriage. Mm-hmm. So, of course, I was always fertile when he was home and infertile when he was gone. And so we would, argue about the system and why do we have to use this? And honestly, part of the reason why we are still using is because we're Catholic. So it's a big reason. Another reason why I understood the value of it outside of my faith. But a lot of times it got to a point that was the sole reason we were doing something, which is a good reason. But for people, that's not enough, sure. We'll forget that. And so that's why for me, I'm very honest with people and say, hey, this is something that my husband and I learned in our early part of marriage, mostly because we had a baby. We had our oldest son is 19. And we knew what we were doing. So, 4 months after we got married, we had a baby. Have a baby. We're early married anyway. So we kind of dealt with all those things early on in our marriage. And one thing we learned, and my husband is excellent about talking about the acronym of SPICE, the spiritual, physical, intellectual, creative, and emotional kind of sexuality aspects of communication. That I don't think is new. I don't think Creighton made that. I think that's been around for a long time. It's just the acronym he particularly used, but my husband started realizing that we fought about things that were underlying. So what we learned was, and I've talked with other practitioners, is that NFP won't cause marital issues, but it will bring marital issues to light.
Yes.
Because it forces communication. Because especially if you're avoiding a pregnancy, it forces that, well, I'm not getting attention. Why are we really fighting? Are we fighting because of this? Or is there something else that we're lacking? We weren't spending enough time together. We were roommates. We weren't, right. There wasn't that, connection outside the bedroom. So I tell my engaged couples, I'm like, it's okay to want to burn your chart or whatever, or throw it out the window and say, I'm done with this. That's okay to say, but you need to have that discussion together and then talk about, why do we want to throw this away? Because just because you throw it away and go on the pill doesn't take away that need for intimacy outside the bedroom, right? So those issues are still going to be there. And so you're still going to have to deal with them regardless. And that's one of the things that it took us, too long to figure out. That the party was actually in some ways a blessing, because would we have had those conversations otherwise? I don't know. Would we have over the years, would we have dealt with certain issues that, because of our frustration with charting, kind of brought to light? I don't know, but I'm grateful that we did that. And then my husband will be like, I don't think we've been doing SPICE enough because we've been fighting or whatever. And so we need to figure out, okay, how are we? And then he'll go, have we been praying together? Have we been taking walks or whatever? Or have we been talking about, so we kind of go through all of the little letters of how are we connecting outside the bedroom? Because as I've said a long time ago, is my husband and I used to do talks to newly married couples, was intimacy is what's outside the bedroom. That's true intimacy, is really being vulnerable with your spouse and them knowing the good, the bad, and the ugly about you and still accepting you for who you are. Like, that's way more scarier
Yeah.
like sharing like who you are, because when you come home, you obviously with people you love, you tend to do things that you wouldn't say to, when you get mad to someone, at the grocery store.
Yeah.
And
Right.
so they're like, oh my gosh, I would be so embarrassed if someone else saw me just do that. And so that to me, then that building up that relationship makes, when you do come together, that much more special and intimate, makes that much more important. And our culture just kind of throws out intimacy as just having sex.
Yeah.
Like, oh, we're being intimate. I mean, you look at TV and movies and things like that, but that's not really intimacy. And so, and I think people are starting to understand. I think there's just, because of the contraceptive kind of culture and just, oh yeah, sure. And that, I think that's why I try to stress with my couples is the communication part as well, whether they're trying to conceive or not. Because when my husband and I was 38 and I had my son, and then we had a miscarriage before him. And then I started having major fertility health issues. Like 39, my fertility health kind of tanked. And I didn't get any answers from anyone. I went to doctor after doctor, and they were like, "Oh, hey, I can put you on the pill." And I'm like, "That's not helpful."
Like, that's
oh,
not.
You're 40, or I'm like, "What the heck?" So I'm supposed to feel like crap in my 40s? Like what? So
Yeah, that's not fair.
Like, that's honestly, I've like a lot of my clients in their 40s hear that a lot from. Well, you're in your 40s. Okay, so and then I was very blessed that a NAPRO technology doctor, Dr. Jones, moved to my area, and he was the first one to go, no, that's not normal. Let's do some testing. And that's, then I got to kind of see the NAPRO technology side of it. But it was hard, like those years of all the hormonal stuff, my husband and I struggled, but then also like when I was going for the trying to conceive. Now I haven't struggled with infertility, but I have struggled with, we were losing babies. We lost a baby at 16 weeks, and then we lost 2 more after that. And he was just like, and I was just like, this isn't going to be the end of my fertility story. So I was just like, yay. And he was like, but you're making me feel like a robot. Like, stop. Like, and so it was one of those where there's a level of communication, but I've also felt that with when, again, like I've never struggled with infertility. So I'm only sharing things that clients have said to me over the years of like, I feel like I'm the one that's doing everything and it's all on me. And I've heard that from women, even with trying to avoid, like even with fertility awareness. And that's why I say, well, then you need to talk to your husband about how they can get involved. Like for me, it works better if I just do it. I keep my chart in a certain area and he can look at it. But we've learned our own little way of me telling him where I am in my cycle. And so that's our way of doing it, because I'm a control person. So I want to write it on my chart. So, and he travels for so long, but other clients, the husband will chart for them or, be involved. I'm like, have them come to appointments. Like, so it's one of those where that communication piece is so important, because again, you just want to give up. So to me, in order to successfully use fertility awareness long-term, you need to know why you're doing it. So, and continuously go back to your why. I mean, I'm 46 and I'm so over charting. I'm so over it. I've been doing it for 20 years. And I'm like, but I wouldn't stop doing it because I know more about my body and I'm more in tune with my body, that in ways that, like, with regards to, I know there's a whole movement now, which I think is amazing, like tailoring your exercise schedule to your cycle. And we're just learning so much about how now, like how women in their cycle, I'm like, oh my gosh, yes. Like, I know that during this is, what kind of exercise I like, or how I feel, or I know I need more sleep during this cycle. Like, the things that charting has given me, not only for my own health, but for my marriage, has been definitely worth all the challenges, I would say. And like I was telling a lady last night, I said, it's also helps me advocate for my health. Yeah. So like I have low thyroid disease, and I knew that because of charting, and I advocated for myself and kept pushing back, even though doctors were saying, oh no, you're normal. I was like, no. And so I've learned in other areas of my health, not just fertility, because so when you chart, you become so much aware of what's going on in your body. And then you start to pay attention to how you're feeling throughout your cycle. how, oh, when I do this during this time, it backfires, like period wise. Oh, don't go
Right.
on a marathon, for me anyways. And so I just started, I don't run anyway, so I wouldn't do it any time I cycle, but but like high intensity exercise, I can't do that. That's more of a rest period. And so, so I've learned to learn that about my health, but also just kind of saying, hey, that medicine is working. Even within NAPRO technology, like I will go back and say, no, I don't like that. This isn't working. We need to try something else. I try to help my clients do the same, not in a mean way. Just say, if it's not working for you, you are allowed to speak up and say, this isn't working for me. And if they don't do it, then go find a new doctor. Like
that is so important too. And I love that you advocate that with your clients. That's amazing. Well, Holly, we're coming up on running out of time here. Holly, your story and your insight is just incredible. Thank you so much for sharing everything that you did today and for coming on the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks so much for listening. If you are not already following us on Instagram, be sure to check us out at Charting Toward Intimacy. And if you have comments, questions, episode ideas, I love hearing from you guys. Please send me an email or reach out on Instagram. Links to those are in the show notes. Until next time.